Welcome back to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. It is Monday, August 4th, National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day, the day that champagne was invented by Dom Perignon. It's Obama's birthday. There's a lot going on. Today we're talking about Untamed. It's a drama, nature, murder mystery, which came out on Netflix last month. It was 6 episodes. It stars Eric Bana as Kyle Turner, a federal special agent who works for the ISB in Yosemite National Park. The ISB stands for Investigative Services Branch. He's got more authority than the regular ranger. He's called in to investigate the death of a Jane Doe who falls off of El Capitan. Throughout the 6 episodes, we followed the investigation, learn Kyle's backstory, watch his protege rookie ranger Naya acclimate to her new post. It's a mini-series, so everything gets wrapped up at the end, but there are plenty of twists along the way. I have to know, first of all, was this series created by the people who made Godless?
No, but it's from people you should know. Mark L. Smith. Does that name sound familiar at all?
No, but I was almost positive that this was a Godless thing because it has so many parallels. You've got mortal heroes, people who are supposed to be the do-gooders, the protagonists of the season, but they're not like, they get shot and they're not like the best at their jobs. And they also have haunted pasts. You've got a strong Native American, like spirit guide elements, horses, wildlife, and they're just cheating with these environments. If you remember when Godless came out, it was like crazy how on a small screen TV, Netflix had spent up to film this thing.
Huge.
It looked amazing. And now we've done Yellowstone stuff.
Right.
We've done Sweet Tooth and Yellowstone in 1923. We've seen that national park. But to get Yosemite, I mean, it kicked off with Apple's 2015 wallpaper. I've seen the first shot of the show for the last 10 years of my life. El Capitan is one of the most world famous like mountains in the world, especially since Alex Honnold in fucking Free Solo. Like ever since then, it's just amazing to see that they took that and then they were like, let's have a girl just fall off it. I bet you Alex Honnold won't watch the series.
When it comes to like rock climbing enthusiasts, that first scene especially, they have been seething with anger over them not having the right equipment. The bolts that they were using were terrible. And then like even later on in that episode when Eric Bana or Kyle Turner comes down the mountain, they were like, why is he not wearing a helmet? He would have been fired immediately. He's not wearing any type of like protective gear. He is
presented as the top level guy when he joins the investigation, and also when he descends, it's because it's like a storm's about to arrive, everybody's getting out of there, and it's supposed to show as a character that he doesn't give a crap what everybody else thinks. He just wants to solve the cases as quick as possible.
Still, when you rock climb, you need to be safe.
Yes, of course. No, I'm not arguing on, like, again, he's also suicidal. So, like, his very first scene is him talking to his dead kid, who he knows is dead, Caleb, and they're going to go off into the water where he's going to drown himself. And then he gets the call about the Jane Doe, and that's when he decides that he's going to actually do the case first, So like him and his wife are both throughout this, or ex-wife, are both very depressed. So you shouldn't be surprised if he's not acting exactly 100% the way he should.
I think it might have tricked you because they actually didn't shoot in Yosemite. That's actually been a big thing.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, no, they used some B-roll for it, but really where they shot
B-roll.
was British Columbia.
Okay.
So a lot of
I've been tricked.
A lot of people from Yosemite have been like, this doesn't make any sense. Also,
now, when you say that, do you mean that the inside part of Yosemite doesn't look like that? Because I've never actually been there.
It's from like the person that falls off, the lady.
Yeah.
She would have had to walk 17 miles, bleeding on barefoot, just to get to the top of that mountain.
But I think they addressed that in the show because like they were saying, how did she get from one place to the other, and that she had lived in the forest for so long that she.
But even from allowing squatters on land to just stay there.
It does get ridiculous in that regard because they literally have a drug ring running out of an abandoned
That's
mine.
what other people have talked about as well.
That's in my cons. That's for later. We got to talk about the actual plot of the series, though, and there's a lot of it. So I thought we would just either jump into it. But first, I do have to say, so he's a curmudgeon-y, smart but troubled guy, right? Mm-hmm. We've seen that in Dark Winds. We've seen that in Silo and Long Bright River, where the main detective is like haunted by their past.
Presumed innocent. I had that also.
But he's not a detective, is he?
Yeah, he's not a detective, but he works for law enforcement.
He's a prosecuting attorney.
Yes.
He drinks. He's belligerent. He doesn't care what people think of him.
Department Q.
Yeah, Department Q. He's also like Stick, I guess, Owen Wilson's
Hmm.
character, because he's divorced and he has a dead kid. We've seen that. That was renewed for Apple. He's guilt stricken. He talks to his kid as a ghost. We saw that in L.A. Suits, which was canceled. So there you go. And then Your Friends and Neighbors doc 4 seasons in this. What do they all have in common?
Well, like you said, they have kind of a damaged main character.
Divorced leads, where it's
Yes.
like it's complicated. But no worries, Kyle and his ex are not going to have a will they won't they really in this. It's 100% they're over because of what happened in the past. So there's a lot of plot. Are you ready for it?
Well, yeah, but I also wanted to talk about the creators really fast because
Oh
since
yeah,
you
of
talked
course.
about your comparisons, Mark L. Smith and L. Smith, they are a father-daughter duo. L. Smith hasn't worked on a lot, but Mark L. Smith, this is actually the second
Sorry,
show.
her name is L. Smith and his name is Mark L. Smith.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so Margot Smith is the second show that he's ever worked on, and by worked on, I mean, like, created, executively produced, and wrote. The first show he's ever worked on was actually we reviewed earlier this year in January, American Prime Evil. Peter Berg, if you remember when we talked about that, chose him
Guy from Friday Night Lights,
specifically.
right?
Yeah, he did the movie and the TV show. Chose Margot Smith specifically because Margot Smith has worked on a lot of movies, written a lot of movies. The Revenant, Overlord, The Midnight Skies, Twisters. He's even working on a movie that's coming out next year called The Dog Stars. But yeah, this is like kind of the show that he's
American Prime Evil, I
created.
hadn't even connected with this, but that's a very good comparison just based on environment being such a
It,
big aspect in the show.
if I remember correctly, didn't it also have like a squatters type storyline there as
I
well?
mean, it's a different time in history, so there's a
Right.
lot of people moving around. I think what you're probably thinking about is like when the Mormons and that crew were trying to get one place, like into Utah,
I
and then
just
you
remember
had
the ending scene with kind of the fight scene.
right, and
Yeah,
then you had people coming in faking being Native Americans
right.
or teaming up with them, and then like murdering a bunch of people.
What I have with my pros and cons is I have moments. So whenever you're kind of talking about the summary, I might stop you and talk about the scenes that I have. Because again, it's 5 scenes I thought were really good and 5 scenes I thought were kind of not great.
So yeah, we both watched it. Let's jump into the plot. The park superintendent doesn't like Kyle. He's doesn't like answering to the press about there being a bunch of crime, so he wants Kyle to find this girl as an accident, have a good day, that's it, problem goes away.
Yep.
However, Kyle takes Naya, who is the new rookie ranger, around Yosemite. They end up following leads from the nomads that you talked about to petty drug dealers, empty mines, interview local residents, the Native Americans. 3 things that they know about the Jane Doe is that she had this wrist bracelet that she got at a camp, or they think that she got at a camp back in like 2011ish. So she's not that old.
Is that the wrist bracelet that he dropped when he was coming down the
Yeah, so
mountain?
as he's descending and he's getting her body, because they would have lost the body or something, it might have fallen had he not gotten her right then and there, even though there was a storm coming.
It fell violently too. That was horrifying. I really like the beginning scene because she comes flying over the edge. I was like, ah.
Right. Yeah. No, it was a shock. Again, the jump scares worked, I think, for the show. The twists less so. But she had she had the bracelet, and then she had a gold tattoo of a cross on her inner wrist, and then she had a bullet wound that was hidden because she had been like attacked by some wild animal, and so it took a while to realize she had actually been shot
Mhm.
in the leg. But quickly we learned that it was actually a ricocheted shot. So whoever was either shooting around her or intentionally
Maybe shooting an animal or
May was
something.
sh
Yeah.
maybe was shooting at her, but missed, and then it ended up hitting her anyway, and it was just unfortunate luck. Anyways, Naya, the rookie ranger, finds out that the Jane Doe is probably Lucy Cook, who is a girl who went missing a dozen or so years ago, and her mom passed away when her mom passed away, and they blamed the deadbeat dad at the time. Kyle was in charge of finding her, so that's just an ironic twist.
Right.
Once they know it's Lucy, it gets more complicated rather than less. It's revealed that she lived in the forest for a while, spent the last little bit selling drugs for this gang that was working out of that abandoned mine that they find in one of the later episodes. Um, they're in the middle of the park, and again, they're running a drug ring. I don't see how that's very effective because in order to sell a lot of drugs, you would think that they would have to then leave Yosemite Park, which would take a really long time, and then come back there.
And they found the setup. I mean, they set it up pretty easily because they just took someone who was one of the not the nomads, but one
No,
of
it
the
was one of the nomads.
yeah, one of the nomads, and then they were like, "Here, we're just gonna let you free." He walks straight to the drug ring, and and they just follow him there.
Not exactly. They drop him off back where the nomads were located, but
Right.
they had already taken all their stuff. So he had nowhere else to go, and he's in the middle of the park. So he knows that the best place to find his supplies and stuff would be going back to the people he knows are already in the mine. So that's how they were able to locate it. They also shut this gang down. They find several dead bodies of women who have the same gold tattoo. And so it looks like the case is finally shut and that they killed Lucy. However, Kyle isn't convinced because they seem surprised to find out that Lucy's dead. So Kyle, this is when his backstory comes back to bite him. There's this wildlife manager or management officer named Shane McGuire, who's played by Wilson Bethel.
Right,
Point
right.
yeah, a Poindexter, right?
Yeah, Poindexter from Daredevil, but also the thing about Shane McGuire was I expected him because he shows up in episode 2, it's one of my cons, for him to be in a lot more of the show than he is. He shows up for like one scene every episode.
Right. And at first, when they introduced him, he was already like at odds with Kyle. They
Right.
never seem to be friends. Usually, in this type of story arc, you have a part where you think that he is going to be pretty close to the main character, and then it's going to be a big betrayal.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, he ends up being evil, but he was always evil. There
Yeah, he
was
low key blackmails Kyle throughout the whole series to keep his mouth shut. We don't know exactly about what, but we're kind of able to figure it out
he used
based
to
on
be
the
part of the
clues.
military because he like always carries a gun. But yes,
Right,
right.
he's very into living in the forest, and, but what we learn is that there's this other investigation that Kyle was a part of several months after his kid had died years ago. His kid was kidnapped in the forest and then killed, but they didn't know by who. Turns out that Shane knows who killed the son. He had cameras about,
Mhm.
and he
Motion capture
volunteered
cameras, yeah.
to, well, it was more than motion because he was able to figure out exactly who it was. They had, like, video of the Sam dude killing him,
I
or
think it's
killing
Sean.
Sean,
Yeah.
Sean, possibly, yeah. Sam, I might be thinking of Sam Neill. But speaking of which, it's weird, like, going into this, my initial impressions were, I have not seen Eric Bana in a lot of TV, and then I forgot that he was in Dirty John.
Yeah.
So I have seen him in that. And then Sam Neill, it's weird to see him playing another sheriff-type character, because I saw him do that in Invasion, which was a very short-lived appearance, and in this, it was like he's not doing a lot until the very ending.
Well, it's funny because Sam Neill hasn't done a lot of press for this series, but Eric Bana, he got the
I think it's
script.
Bana. I don't know.
Eric Bana, he got the script back in 2019 and he signed on right after reading the pilot, and it took years before he got the second episode script. And so he said that he wants to go back to comedy roles after doing this just because of how long it's taken for the series to actually come out.
I'm trying to think of the last comedy I've seen with him. Maybe he's done rom-coms.
I think he had even like his own talk show or something like that. I
That's
think,
cool.
yeah.
No, he's a good actor. I enjoyed him. I think as he ages, he becomes better in this type of role, playing a serious role. So maybe don't do that comedy quite yet. Anyway, so there's Poindexter,
Yes.
and he's out in the forest and he hates Kyle. But really what happened was that in the past, he told Kyle and his wife, his ex-wife now, Jill, that this is the person, the Sean guy is the guy who killed their son, Caleb. And he volunteers to then go kill Sean if they pay him. And Kyle
Yes.
says no, and Jill says yes, but Kyle doesn't know that. So Jill pays Kyle to do this, and then or sorry, just pays Shane to do it, and then Kyle has to cover it up because he's in charge of the investigation to find Sean when he goes missing.
So you picked up on that? Because I thought what it was that Jill just said like, "Hey, can you go kill him?" But it was actually
They spell it out at
Shane.
the end,
Yeah.
but I kind of already kind of understood it. For a while, I thought that it was Kyle who just killed Sean and then covered it up himself. But no, he was completely innocent. That's why at the end of the series, he's not going to jail, and also why he feels comfortable telling the investigator who's looking into the old crime or the fact that Sean disappeared and that Kyle might have been not in the best mindset to lead the investigation. Why he says that they have a case and he's willing to sign anything that they want to show that. So he's not going to get in trouble because he's still covering for his wife. But what happens to Poindexter Shane McGuire is that Kyle gets so fed up with him being an asshole to him. And also after his ex-wife tries to kill herself, he publicly sticks a gun in Shane's face at this hotel, which gets Kyle dismissed by the park superintendent really quickly.
Well, he not only did that, he like walked straight up to Shane and just like sucker punched him right away, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, what's worse? If you get punched in the face, I don't think he would have necessarily been fired for it, or the incident would have been reported. But you stick a gun out, you take a gun out in front of a bunch of innocent people,
Yeah.
and that's gonna, yeah. So he's off the case of Lucy's. However, when he's turning over the evidence to the newbies or the new people who are going to take over, he discovers Lucy's phone, which had been in her backpack, but in like a hidden pocket. Shane And it's like in the phone, he figures out by using her corpse, he's able to unlock the phone.
One of my favorite parts in episode 5 is they have to, because it doesn't open immediately. We see that in so many different TV shows where they use a dead body, but they had to touch up her face to make sure that the phone was
Yeah, I
able
think
to
Apple was the
recognize her.
first one to start doing like where it wasn't just a simple photo that you could stick in front. Like the first face IDs for phones that you could unlock were before iPhones did it, but you could literally just print out a photocopy of someone's face and it would still unlock it. Now, not so much. So they heat up her face and then they unlock the phone and he finds out that Shane, the person he hates, was actually dating Lucy. And so he goes to confront Shane about that, and he actually finds proof at his place that he was part of this whole drug gang ring thing. So Shane sees that Kyle has figured this out and decides, I'm just going to kill this dude. Like, he should have just kept his nose out of my
Right.
business. And he's about to do that. He's about to kill him after like a very long hunting because he shoots Kyle at first. Kyle survives for a bit, like just on the run, and they're in the middle of Yosemite. Then Naya saves the day, shoots Poindexter in the back. Shane is dead. And then we learn that Shane wasn't the one who killed Lucy. So the gang didn't kill Lucy,
That
and
all
Shane
thing
didn't
was
kill
for naught,
Lucy.
it almost seems like.
And Kyle just doesn't feel good about this. So he tracks down Lucy's prior residence, this terrible foster family. He puts together that his mentor, Paul, Sam Neill,
Yes.
is actually the one who took Lucy away when she was young. Why did he do that? Because Paul is actually Lucy's father.
I don't want to give anything away, but that in and of itself reminded me so much of the Endeavor finale. I'll just
Oh.
say that, like, the main character closely tied with a different character and then realizes that whole time that person was actually evil.
Right, because all we had seen of Lucy's backstory was just her hanging out with her mom, who was very sick, and they're staring out into the sun on one of the top of the mountain cliffs.
Mhm.
And then the mom walks away, and then we see this ominous figure show up. We also see her back at home with her deadbeat dad and the brother, like a younger version of her brother. And then she goes to her room, and then she turns around, and we're led to believe that the kidnapper is there. But the kidnapper turns out to just be her real father, who was Paul, who was trying to cover up so that like his own family doesn't find out about his that he was the baby daddy of like another person.
Yeah.
And so he takes Lucy, he sticks her in this terrible foster care a preacher system that's like, I don't know, a county over or something. And then when Lucy grows up, she escapes that and she comes back to Yosemite and she starts asking Paul for money. Paul confronts her at one point and he sees her running through the forest. He shoots around her to try to stop her. It ricochets, it hits her. She thinks that he's trying to kill her. She runs to the top of the cliff and actually does jump off herself.
Yeah, right. It
Or
was
kind
her
of,
choice.
yeah, which is kind of crazy. After all this, she was not pushed.
So
But
much miscommunication, if you realize, in this TV show, from Shane's death thinking that was tied to
I mean,
her.
Shane's death, if he hadn't killed the Sean guy, would look like he was involved with the drug cartel. But other than that, like he didn't deserve to die.
I understood it for the story, but I was also talking about, like, the scene that you were just describing because Paul says, "I never meant to kill her. I just really kinda meant to
Yeah.
scare her."
And because Kyle is steadfastly like, you have to come clean about this. The truth has to come out. Paul kills himself. Like, and so the end of the series, when you see a famous lead and they don't seem to be doing a lot,
Yes.
wait for the ending because
It's
that's probably going to come back into play.
it happens so much with TV shows and film where it's like, yeah, if you have the biggest name, but especially if they're, like, kind of the ones that's heading the case or employing people to head the case, they usually have something to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving comes to mind, for example.
Yeah. Side stories. We have Naya's baby daddy, also played by JD Pardo from Mayans MC, right?
That was so fun to see him because I'm making my way through season 4 right now.
This
Yeah.
plot has absolutely no bearance, or all it does really is it gives Kyle his one moment of being like a real big hero because JD Pardo tracks down. I don't even know his name in the show, but he tracks
It's Michael.
Michael.
Yeah.
Michael tracks down where his son is at, and he starts to attack Kyle's ex-wife who's watching Naya's son, and that's when Kyle shows up and arrests him, but like in the most badass way ever.
I agree with you. As cool as it was to see him, it was so unneeded. It did not do anything. I didn't feel like Naya needed that for her backstory.
Everybody in the show needed some sort of dysfunction in their
But
family.
this one felt like the most thrown in, like the most
Yeah.
just like we need to put a like an evil boyfriend or husband in there.
Yeah. And then we've already talked about Kyle's son and what happened to him. But it's because Kyle and his wife were ultimately responsible for Sean's death, I guess his family is now entitled to sue the park. And then, as far as my cons are concerned, you've got the drug ring running out of the mine. One of the coolest moments was when the dynamite was about to explode.
So that's actually some of the scenes that we haven't covered yet for my pros. I thought the beginning scene to episode 5 was crazy. Yes, it doesn't make any sense, but gunfires,
It's
explosions.
like Banshee.
I mean, it was insane. It was like the first 10 minutes of the show, and I was like, this is I was that was the most intrigued I was with the
Another
show.
godless moment where you'll have like slow burn, slow burn, slow burn, huge scene, and then slow burn, slow burn, slow burn. Yeah. And then they made such a big deal about the gold tattoos. Like literally a kid died who was selling drugs because he just asked a question about them. And then it turns out it was like nothing. It wasn't even that big a deal. Like they arrest the gang that's doing the drugs, and then that was it. Like that was the equivalent of all that corruption that was happening.
I
It felt like the
really
Wilson Fisk storyline in season 1 of Daredevil, where they make such a big deal about saying his name. Then once it's been said, everybody just talks about Wilson Fisk like it's no big deal.
I really didn't like Teddy, mostly because not because of the actor, but just it felt like he was in. That's a person that he
Who's
interviews
Teddy?
in episode 2, the kid with the drugs who
The one
was,
who ends up dead?
yeah, who was going to be
Sure.
asking about the tattoos. It felt like he was just there to die. Like he dies in episode 2.
Yeah, you could have probably cut those scenes out along with the Pardo scenes in terms of fat. However, I think the biggest con that I have is like no characters without this dysfunction that we talked about. Eric Bana and his wife Jill. So Kyle and Jill both have the dead kid. She tries to commit suicide. He's suicidal. He's drinking all the time. By the end, he does say he stopped drinking. Lucy had a dead mom. Her real dad kidnapped her. They framed her fake dad, who ended up dying. Put her in this terrible foster care system. The chief, we learn that he was the real father, so his whole family is messed up.
Did you
And then
see
he
that
kills
coming?
himself.
Did the twist? I know you said the twist wasn't that great, but did you see it coming? Was it predictable?
Okay, so in the last episode, it's shown, and then they go over the top spelling out like what happened, but you kind of pick up on it as that last episode happens. So when I say it's predictable, it's not like I could have predicted that in episode 1, but at the same time, the show goes overboard in having to just be like, see, it makes sense, see, it makes sense.
You got there before the very end of the series.
Yeah, but that goes along with all the twists, particularly to like Shane being the one who is dating Lucy. I think they started talking about Lucy dating someone in the 3rd episode, and they took till like episode 5 before they confirmed that. And these are hour-long episodes, so it's annoying. Then the California deputy also having the psychopath stalker cop, J.D. Pardo. So that leaves Eric Bana's family, Lucy's family, the chief, the deputy. Really, it's only Salty Mustache Ranger who probably has the healthiest family situation of any of them. And he's just there for comic relief.
One of my favorite scenes is when he goes up to the Foot Locker worker, Matt Surge, and he's
Yes.
like, talk with Kyle. It's his birthday today. And
Yeah.
and like, I really
He's
enjoyed
jealous, but at the same time, he understands that Kyle's grieving. I don't know.
Again,
he's a fun character.
That's one of the scenes I had in my pros. And also, I did like the scene in episode 4 where Shane and Kyle are talking at the bar, because I thought that their talk was actually the most interesting that it got, because it was really like subtlety, and it felt like almost a chess match with what they were saying.
I'll push back on that one, because I think that was another point where they were kind of spelling out what I had predicted already, which was that they were all involved in Sean's death. Sean, they introduced early on saying, oh man, you were in this investigation a long time ago and they never found him. And instantly I was like, oh, that's the guy who killed the kid, and he killed him. So like that was in episode 1. So it took a really long time for that storyline to flesh itself out. So that didn't feel quite earned either. I will say that I liked the dynamite, the black bear, the flying body falling off the cliff, all great stuff. But the twists themselves felt spelled out. And so I'm going to give this, I'm of 2 minds, but I'll probably just give it a 7 out of 10. Not nearly as good as Godless.
I think actually I'm going to be way more harsh on the show. I thought it was juggling way too many plots. This was so overstuffed. A majority of the time I thought the series was boring, and despite some good acting, I can really only give this a 4 out of 10.
Okay.
But it's really...
It's got that old, like, ghost haunting people, people talking to that. That can get a little tiring. Sad divorced dads. Like, how many of those shows do we need just this
I
year?
thought it was so silly the way they ended episode 5 with a cliffhanger where Caleb is, like, whispering in Kyle's ear, "He's coming," as he
Yeah.
gets shot at. I was like, "Come on,
Yeah,
this is
get rid of the ghost kid too. That would have made the show better too. I think Kyle's character was pretty cool. Like they showed he was smart enough and he knew the park really well. And the fact that the show did trick me, I thought the whole thing was filmed in Yosemite just based off of the first scene and the fact that it was so like I just thought it was pretty expansive.
For
But
people that went to Yosemite, they could tell right away. They were like, "There's barely any landmarks being
so I
shown."
should probably knock this down to a 6 out of 10 just based on that, what I'm learning right now as the podcast's going on. But yeah, that's my rating.
When we did American Primeval, I talked about the big divide between critics and audience scores, but here it seems like everyone is in line. Check these scores out. 7.3 on IMDb. Here are the episodes. 7.4, 7.4, 7.5, 7.4, 7.5, and a 7.3. And then you go over to Rotten Tomatoes, 79% critic score, audience score 72%. In every single reviews, I found 5 that said practically the same thing, which is that it's not the smartest of thrillers, but those mountains sure are lovely to look at. That
Yeah,
was
they
The
are.
Guardian. Every single
So the
place.
Guardian was tricked too.
Oh no, it wasn't just The Guardian. It was Time, Los Angeles Times, Forbes, Pace Magazine, all talking about how this thing looked fantastic,
I mean, it was
but
so
that the
funny
story was
because
bad.
it looks like the back of the Apple wallpaper. It looks exactly like the shot that you get of the wallpaper.
Again, there was B-roll of the real
I'm wondering if
Yosemite.
they actually just went to Apple and was like, "Hey, I know we're not a show for you, but
What happened was Eric Bana, they did want to film there, but he said they weren't able to get the access that they needed.
exactly. That's why I know that all those other shows that do film in Yellowstone or at least talk about it, Yellowstone, Sweet Tooth in 1923, like it just seemed like a more accessible park that gives out rights easier. But I don't know that for sure. But that's why I was so surprised. The only thing I've ever seen from Yosemite is El Capitan from Free Solo, and
And
also that other guy who did the same mountain,
right, what was the name
the
of
guy
that
without the
Netflix?
finger, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
he
yeah,
actually
yeah.
works with them.
And so I'll end with kind of the future of the series. It was billed a limited series, but Mark L. Smith and Lily Santiago, that's the person that plays Naya, they're open to it. Eric Bana said, "We'll have to wait and see." And from what I understand, Mark L. Smith, even though it hasn't been renewed for a second season, is already kind of working on it. So
I mean, if it did happen, I wonder if it would follow Eric Bana's character or if it just would be he's done.
I think it might be that he's done.
Yeah, because I would actually rather watch him go on to another, like if they would hire him back, but on another national
Mhm.
park, than follow the rest of these
And I
characters.
think it's probably going to follow the rest of the characters. So
Yeah,
uh,
but that's like the only one to lead it would then be Naya. That's not
pull terminalist where you bring it back. Taylor.
previously, but
Yeah,
I feel like they kind of gave away all the past. Like there's not much past to then delve into.
true. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.